This episode of On the Beat is brought to you by Ingles. Shop online with Ingles Curbside Pickup. New curbside stores opening every week. Please welcome Mike Griffith.
Well, hey, everybody, Mike Griffith here. Welcome to tonight's Ingles on the Beat segment. Obviously, a lot going on for Georgia football this week. One of the greatest advertisements that any football program could have, the NFL draft. Georgia has done it better than anybody the last 4 years. Those are Kirby's full recruiting cycles. They've had more players drafted in the NFL than any program over the last NFL drafts, and they'll challenge this year to have the most number of draft picks. I believe right now you're looking at between maybe 9 and 12 players that could be drafted from Georgia. Of course, last year, the Bulldogs set an NFL record with 15 players drafted, including a record 5 defensive players in the first round. So let's get to this. I'm going to talk about this first. We're going to go right into the NFL draft, and then I'm going to get into the 5 biggest questions that I have about Georgia football as they exit the spring for 2023. But first, the draft, because it starts Thursday, and people are going to be talking about a lot of Georgia players and Kirby Smart's ability to develop talent, and you better believe that recruits are going to notice that. Now, yes, recruits do want to get paid, and yes, they do want to play early, but Kirby's pitch is, hey, at the end of the day, the big money, the $30 million, $35 million, $40 million deals that you're going to be able to get coming out of college, much, much more than the $10,000, $50,000 NIL knockoff. And that's all you're going to get on the front end. A lot of kids are going to develop into it. Obviously, Stetson Bennett had over $1 million in NIL deals. I believe Brock Bowers probably approaching that as well. But coming in, they're not going to negotiate that kind of money. So this is where the draft counts, because Kirby uses this to negotiate and says, look, you want to get paid now, peanuts, or you want to get paid a lot later? You come to Georgia, you play against the best, you get developed by the best coaches, and then boom, here's the track record. And he points to the NFL draft. Last year, in addition to 15 draft picks, in addition to 5 defensive players in the first round, Trayvon Walker, the number 1 overall pick. That said a lot. So this year's draft, the first guy on the board, I'm going to go through in the order that I think they're going to get selected, kind of give you a ballpark of where I expect them to go. And I could be wrong. You never really know what NFL teams are thinking, but I could share what I think is the value. I don't think Jalen Carter gets outside the top 5. Remember, there was a time when he was being considered the number 1 pick. And rightly so. He's so dynamic and disruptive. Kirby calls him a train wrecker in there, not only able to hold the gap, but able to go straight in and attack the quarterback and apply pressure. That dual threat is rare. Jalen, I believe, is a generational talent. And, I know his off-field issues were well documented. I know I wrote enough of them myself. Didn't want to, but a few surprises came up and we've had to document that. But I think Jalen Carter is a top 5 pick. I'd be shocked if he goes outside the top 5. After Jalen, I think probably Broderick Jones. I know a lot of talk about Nolan Smith, and maybe somebody likes Nolan enough to go top, but I see Broderick top 15, anywhere from 10 to 15. I think he's the best offensive tackle in the draft because of the upside. He's only played 19 games at Georgia, started all year this year, and didn't allow any sacks, but the athleticism, the aggression that he plays with, I think he will get stronger once he's with an NFL team. He gets hooked up with those trainers. I think he's going to be a stronger, even more athletic version of himself at the next level. Next up, Nolan Smith. I love Nolan coming off the edge. I compare him to a raptor. You've seen the raptor in Jurassic Park, the way they chase people, the way they close. I mean, this guy, his dimensions are such. He's so explosive, fast, plays with passion, locker room guy. Somebody's going to fall in love with Nolan Smith. Somebody already has. He's going to break some hearts because I think a lot of teams are going to hope that Nolan is around, and I don't think he goes outside of the top 15, top 20. So, and then you got a couple guys. So I think those are first-round locks. I think you got 3 first-round locks. And then there's 2 more guys who I think could go in the first round. I'm going to start with Darnell Washington, 6'7", 270, 4.65 40, 11-inch hands, record wingspan, huge catch radius, and just crushes people. And he's humble. I like it that he calls himself a role player, because in the NFL, targets don't often go to tight ends unless, they're elite guys, right? There's only a few of those elite tight ends. You really need your tight end to be a blocker first and be good with that. And Darnell is. He's a father. He's got a family man. He's got children to support. I think he's going to approach it from a very mature perspective. I think he will be a more noted NFL player than he was in college. Obviously at Georgia, Brock Bowers was there, caught all the passes. I think Darnell will get a lot more attention in the NFL. Next guy is another guy that I think will have a long and successful career, and that's Kelee Ringo. You just don't see guys with Keely's size and speed. He's 6'1", 210, runs a sub 4.4. He's played cornerback, and we've seen kind of some hits and misses at Georgia, some real dramatic plays, game-changing plays. You think about the interception against Alabama that sealed the national championship game win. You think about the interception this past year against Tennessee. Georgia really turned the Vols away. They didn't even have to play longer than minutes left. Kelee Ringo was part of the reason why. I think he'll grow into a safety, though. We'll see, but I do think he'll have a long, successful career. Then there's two more guys that maybe could sneak into the second day, the second and third round, and we'll start out with Kenny McIntosh. Kenny ran a 4.7, 240, and everybody's freaking out. Listen, I know what I saw with the ball in his hands, and so do you. He's got breakaway speed. He's had the longest run from scrimmage in a couple of seasons. I think this year he might have passed Milton back up too. But he's a guy who has home run speed with the ball in his hands. I don't know what he does on the clock. He's not a track guy. His high school didn't have a track team. That probably is going to cost him money. Something for prospects to think about. Learn to run track and learn how to get out of the blocks. At some point, if you're an elite enough player to make it to the NFL, that 40 time is going to be used for you or against you. Everything else, though, about Kenny, clutch player. You think about the Missouri game. You think about Kirby Smart. When Kirby was at the national championship celebration this year, and he wanted to say that a couple things that he stood out and remembered from the season. Number one was Kenny playing hurt against Missouri, carrying the team on his back, getting clutch yards, 4th and 2, down 10, season on the line at the Missouri 4-yard line. Who's Todd Monken going to go to? He's got Bowers. He's got Washington. He's got Adonai Mitchell. He's got Ladd McConkey. He can let Stetson keep it. No, he hands it to Kenny McIntosh on 4th and 2 with the season on the line. Kenny breaks the tackles. NFL teams notice that. In addition, no drop passes his entire collegiate career. And then you see how well he runs those routes. So he's reliable. He's clutch. He can run. He can catch. And he lights up the room. Kirby called him the alpha leader of the offense. Everybody likes Stetson, and the players all like him. But Kenny was the guy that really had the juice with the players in the Georgia offensive huddle. So Kenny's next up on the list for me. Then Chris Smith. This is another guy, Soldier Chris, right? That's his nickname. You think about the pick 6 against Clemson. What a game-changing play. Really launched that 2021 national title season. If Georgia loses that game, I can say they don't win a national title because you don't get in with 2 losses, okay? You don't get that mulligan that they got when they lost to Alabama in the SEC championship game. That was a pivotal game, pivotal play. I think still the play of the season, maybe so far the play of the Kirby Smart era. Pretty huge. Maybe that's a topic for another show. Chris came in a little smaller than they would like as a safety and maybe not as fast. He also ran a 4.72. I think that will hurt him a little bit more than Kenny. I'm not sure what they think of his recovery speed. At Georgia, I don't know how long he had to be in coverage because of that dominant front 7 and that pass rush. But I like Chris's football IQ, his ability to make timely plays. And I think somebody's going to be happy to get him. I think he'll be a special teams ace, and I think he'll be a very capable guy that could probably play 2 or 3 different positions in the secondary as a reserve. If he doesn't break through at his primary spot as a safety. I will note, he has gotten bigger and faster every year at Georgia. This is a guy who works really hard in the weight room. Next up on my list, let's see here. I'd write all these down. There's so many of them. Warren McClendon, he was the right tackle. And of course, Warren McClendon, 37 consecutive starts. He comes from a military family, a lot of discipline from Warren McClendon. And here's all you need to know. If you're an NFL coach and you're trying to decide about Warren McClendon and you say, he was out that night, he was involved in that fatal, here's what you take away, though. That SUV hit the brick wall at about 84 miles per hour, okay, per police reports. He was practicing. He was sitting in the front seat, and he had a concussion, and he went to the hospital, was treated, released. Amazing. 2 other people perished in that wreck. Warren walked away from it with a slight concussion. He was back on the football field at the Senior Bowl within 2 weeks of hitting a brick wall at 84 miles per hour. That is a guy with a lot of determination, okay? And I don't know how spiritual you are, but maybe you even think that's a guy that's supposed to be here. And I do believe his personality, his character, his leadership, maybe not as big, maybe not quite as big, I should say. It's not like he's small. Maybe not quite as big, maybe not quite as athletic. But when you talk to Warren McClendon and you meet him and you shake his hand, there's something about that. This is a guy that I think an NFL team will give a chance to and believe in. And I expect him to be the next off the board as early as maybe the 5th or 6th round. Next up, Robert Beal. Here's another guy, 6 years in the program. And we know that Beal kind of had some issues early on. He had to outgrow it. He had to mature. So in 2021, when Adam Anderson left the team with his issues, Robert stepped in and actually ended up leading the team in sacks. This year, Robert's role was not to go get him and be that edge guy. We saw a lot more of Nolan there, but he's big. He ran. Listen, I'm so impressed at 240. This guy ran a sub 4.6, sub 4.5 40. I think he was in the high 4.4 range, 4.48, 4.49. Somebody's going to see this. He's slipped under the radar, much like Channing Tindall did last year. Robert's a guy that slipped under the national radar, didn't win any honors awards, but they know he's a football player. And I think he'll also be drafted in the 5th or 6th round. Then we get to maybe, a player that Georgia fans will certainly remember, and Stetson Bennett. NFL teams, a lot of news coming out that maybe his interviews didn't go quite as well as he would have hoped. We know he looked good running the 40, he ran a 4.46, decent, not elite, but decent speed. Stetson improved, I think, dramatically as a passer between his junior. I think as a junior, he had a pop gun arm. As a junior, he did. Because a lot, the only thing was that the pop fade pass, we didn't see a lot of the intermediate outs where he would show arm strength and velocity. This year, however, I said that's no longer what I would say at all. I think he's developed quite a bit. I like his footwork. I think he improved his arm strength, saw good velocity on the ball. Not great, but good enough. Stetson is an adequate passer to be an NFL backup and maybe even a starter if he can continue to have that clutch gene and that ability to make plays. His mobility is attractive. You're seeing more teams now that like mobile quarterbacks, and Stetson's a guy that can move. He picks his spots well. I think he's got a high football IQ. He's already played in the NFL offense for Todd Monken. I think he's going to get drafted. I think somebody's going to give him a shot. Stetson has proven that he can be a good backup quarterback. I know there's some current concerns now that, well, maybe his ego won't let him, or maybe he won't. Listen, he was a backup behind Jake Fromm in 2019, and then he had to sit behind JT at the end of 2020 and even in the spring of 2021. So he's been in that position before. He doesn't like it, but he has excelled and worked hard in that position, or he wouldn't have gotten another chance at Georgia to be the starter that he obviously capitalized on in storybook fashion. So I would be surprised if Stetson Bennett didn't get drafted. He could go, to me, as early as the 5th round. If he signs as a free agent, that's fine too, because then he's going somewhere that he picks, and he will pick a good situation. Karis Jackson, Jack Podlesny, I don't expect either one of these players to be drafted. I'm not saying that they can't be, because Jack is so reliable and Karis is such a character guy, but neither one of them have like a freakish physical trait. And they're both at positions, quite frankly, where you kind of need that, especially kicker. You just don't see kickers drafted that often. You got to be, just have super toe. Jack is reliable. Jack is consistent. Jack is a character guy. It's going to come down to like a job interview. Someone's going to have to really like him. I think one of the hardest jobs to get in the world is as a place kicker in the NFL or as a punter. Think about it. Most teams only carry one or two, and those people can stay there forever. They don't get hit. Their careers last long. It's a really tough place to break in. So hopefully, maybe a team really likes him, will draft him, or he has a really good workout and falls into a good situation. So much of it's timing and luck. And are you with the right team and the veteran gets hurt? And then just the tenacity of keeping yourself ready for the call up, right? We've seen Rodrigo Blankenship in, out, back in. So hopefully Jack will find his way to the league. Really, really a kind, fascinating, intelligent young man, a tremendous ambassador for Georgia. And I would say these same things about Karis. I ran into Karis on campus. Couldn't be more impressed. You like the guys that shake your hand and look you in the eye. That Karis was active, with student government. You know that he's a community-oriented figure wherever he goes, is getting one of those man of the year candidates. Listen, early on, he led the team in receiving one of those seasons. I want to say 2020. And, nice slot receiver, runs good routes, catches the ball. Certainly a very consistent, capable return man, just a trustworthy person. If Kirby put this guy out there on the return team, tells you everything you need to know. So hopefully Karis ends up in the right place. Moving on now, the 5 concerns that I have for Georgia football coming out of the spring. I guess, I'm sorry, concerns is not the right way to put that. 5 questions. Because they're not concerns yet. Why would we be concerned, right? Kirby has answered questions like this before, better than anyone. Heck, they lost 15 guys to the NFL draft last year and went out and won another national title. So not as many concerns this year as last year. That said, we don't really know what else is out there, right? We have to factor in that other teams have something to say about this. And I'll start out number 1 with now follow me on this. Carson Beck upside. No, see, I've already confused myself. Carson Beck downside, Brock Vandagriff upside. And here's what I mean by that. The question with Carson has never been the talent. He's always had the talent. Consistency is one thing that Kenny McIntosh said, hey, he'll just need to be more consistent. Okay, that's a day in, day out type of thing. And to me, it's adversity. Kirby was talking about it earlier this spring when Carson had 3 interceptions in the first scrimmage, and Kirby said, you want to make sure your guys don't go full metal jacket when you make a mistake. So you make a mistake and you make it worse. You don't respond the right way, or you let it carry over. Maybe, what happens to Carson when the team falls behind, if it ever falls behind? It seems like it's been a minute. How does Carson handle adversity? We didn't see it in the spring game. He was fantastic. There was no adversity. He scored touchdowns on his first 3 drives. So to me, that's the question. Now, Brock Vandagriff upside. Conversely, Brock didn't get to throw to Brock Bowers like Carson did. Carson had 92 of his, 214 G-Day game yards, went to Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers. And Vandagriff, I don't even know if he had a series with Bowers, might have had 1 series with McConkey, didn't have the benefit of targeting either one of them. Now Brock has great mobility beyond just good pocket presence. This is a guy that can put his shoulder down. He runs like a running back. He doesn't run like a scared quarterback. He runs like a running back. Very capable guy, good leader. I think he's going to graduate in the fall. He was never going to leave. I know some people now that Brock Vandagriff decided to stay, he decided to stay after the season when he said he was going to graduate next fall. That was the plan. And people say, he said he was going to pray, but he prays about it every day. He prays about his family. So Vandagriff's all in, brings a different dimension. It's good to have 2 elite quarterbacks, but what's Brock's upside? How good could Vandagriff look if he had Bowers to throw to, if he had McConkey to throw to, if he's got some starting running back capable guys, Dejon and Kendall behind him. Number 2, how to use Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers is a guy that plays through pain, plays through bumps and bruises. You almost got to protect him from himself. So how are they going to utilize, it's kind of like Ladd McConkey. So how are you going to utilize Brock Bowers? Other teams are going to be watching. They're going to have number 19 circled before every game. Where's Brock Bowers? Where's number 19? Because he is the Georgia bailout go-to guy. He catches everything. He's got an amazing catch radius. He's unbelievable after the catch. You heard Tim Tebow say, most tight ends take a tight end screen 10 or 12 yards. This guy can take it 80. So this is your most dynamic, explosive player. And now Bobo has to figure out how to use him. And it's not the same as what Todd Monken had. Monken also had Kenny McIntosh to bring out of the backfield. And Monken had Darnell, the dual threat tight end. Bobo doesn't have that. He's got a more conventional group of personnel around him. So how do you use Brock Bowers? And can you keep him healthy for an entire season? Knock on wood, because so far Brock's been fortunate in that respect. But he's played through some stuff. So don't think he's just in perfect. This is a guy that's got bumps and bruises. And how do you use him? Number 3, the edge rusher and the train wrecker, right? The defensive line. And everybody says, Georgia's going to be fine. They've had this and that. Well, you've had. Who is your first round draft pick right now? Micah Williams at defensive end, hopefully coming back off the foot injury, did not finish spring drills. Or whatever. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, whatever that was. I think it was lower body. So who is going to be that guy on the other side to replace Nolan. Nolan Smith was so dynamic, right? The Raptor, as I said earlier in this broadcast podcast, this is a guy that brings so much speed off the edge. And who is that guy? I'm not sure Chaz Chambliss is that guy. I know people say, oh, well, Jalen Walker, Marvin Jones, but they were injured. Well, they were injured. So how do they come back? I don't know how they come back. And then, the guys coming in, I mean, they're all talented. They all look the part, but Kirby, made it pretty clear that they're not where they need to be. So you can't just assume, like, we knew that Nolan was going to be ready to take over. We knew that Jalen Carter was going to be ready to take over as an interior defensive lineman, a train wrecker, a guy that not only holds the gap for the run, but can also disrupt the pass. Who is that guy? I don't know who that guy is. I don't see the heir apparent at either one of those spots. Thus, the defensive line is a question for me. You need players to step in and step up to be at that level. It took all that to win a championship. Think about that. Number 4, the Elite X, right? So to me, you got McConkey on one side on the outside. Love it to me. I think he's a fantastic slot. I'm not saying he couldn't play on the outside, but he's better. He's better coming out of the slot. So who is that guy? Adonai Mitchell took the transfer to Texas. And Marcus Rosemy-Jackson is very capable. I want to be clear about this. This is a guy you can count on and rely on and check the box with. But he's not dynamic. He's not take the top off the defense. Oh, my gosh, ESPN highlight. He's not that. Ra Thomas was brought in from Mississippi State to be that guy. And again, well-documented off-field issue when he first came. That was settled. But by the end of spring, he wasn't out there playing offense. He was not on the offense. He was on special teams. Now, that's one of a couple things. That's either Georgia inviting him to leave or sending a message. And I would guess the latter. But if you're a transfer and you don't even get to play offense in the spring game, Kirby said he's working on some things for him. Well, they're all working on things. I don't even know what that means. So could Georgia possibly go back to the portal and look for another wide receiver before April 30th? I don't know. But to me, that he was brought in to be the guy there, and he hasn't been the guy yet. And it doesn't mean he won't be, but he hasn't yet. So that is why it's a question. And then finally, the running back room. Let's face it, there was injuries there. Dejon had a hamstring in the spring. Milton had a hamstring in the spring. Branson Robinson didn't finish the spring with an injury, a lower leg injury undisclosed. Andrew Paul still recovering from a knee. That's 4 scholarship running backs that we got put question marks around. And, the walk-ons did well, Savon Clark and Cash Jones. But listen, don't kid yourself. Come on now. Don't kid yourself. These aren't RBU All-American first-round draft picks that are playing walk-on. They're walk-ons. And, I think he could. Well, no, he could, maybe get by a game. But you need elite. Georgia needs elite. And when I say needs, I'm talking about on the scale of winning another national title. And I want to be clear about that. And maybe I'm a bit of a football snob. You know what? I am. I am absolutely a football snob. There's no question. I've had a career covering the best and Hall of Famers at each stop. I'm fortunate to cover Alabama in the 90s with Gene Stallings, covered an undefeated Auburn team with Terry Bowden. Del McGee was on that team as a player, by the way, in 1993. Covered a Rose Bowl Michigan State program, went top 10 three out of 3 straight years, won the Big Ten twice, knocked off Urban Meyer. I've covered some elite programs and elite coaches, and Georgia is right now the best. But by covering those programs all those years, Tennessee, Philip Fulmer, 98 title, you grade on a curve, right? So I'll tell you this quick story. So when I did cover Tennessee, I did the report card segment, and I would grade, the players and, what they did and whatnot. And I got a call on a Sunday after the newspaper published, and it was from defensive coordinator John Chavis. And he said, Mike, he goes, I got a bone to pick with you. I said, all right. He said, you gave my linebackers an A- in that game. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, he probably wanted an A or A+. I go, oh yeah, coach. Well, I could have given him a half a grade higher, but he goes, no. That's too high. He said, let me tell you something. He said, I don't want you giving those guys an A. unless they're perfect. Okay. He goes, you writing that A- stuff. They're getting all sorts of pats on the back. They don't need to hear that. They need to know how they really played. I said, okay. He said, you got to understand, okay is not okay. He said, we're trying to win. I said, oh, so that's stuck with me. And I've always used this grading system because, again, I've been fortunate to cover programs that win championships and go undefeated like 3 times in my, at 3 different places. And there's a championship curve. And that's how I grade. So you might say, well, how can he give them a C or a D because Georgia's the best? Well, I know they're a C. I know they're not. That's not on a college football scale of 130 teams or even 14 SEC teams. I'm grading it on a championship scale. What's average on a championship team? What does it take to get an A on a championship level? So when I bring up concerns and questions, it's not because I'm thinking, boy, Georgia's worse than anybody else in the SEC. It's because I'm thinking what it takes to win the championship, in line with the head coach who says, we're not just practicing to beat one team, we're practicing to beat all the teams. That's the way Kirby thinks. And by the way, do you know how many times Kirby Smart has called me to complain about being too critical of his team? Never. In 5 years, do you know how many times he's told me I'm too hard on his players? Never. In 5 years, never. None of the position coaches, nobody, because they understand, they get it. They want that from the out. These players get enough pats on the back and handshakes, and the coaches, look, there's a standard over there, man. And they want to keep their players grounded. That's part of the magic of Georgia football. And why they're a championship program, because as talented as they are, as many 5-star prospects, as many games as they've won, they haven't lost a regular season game since 2020. Think about that. These guys, but when they're in that building, expectations are enormous. Nakobe Dean was talking about, one day he was having kind of a slow practice and Kirby came over and said, hey, Nakobe, look a little tired. You up late? Yeah, I was up late studying, coach. Yeah, were you? Yeah, coach, I had a test and man, I think I got a little cold. Kirby said, hey, Nakobe, you know what? Nobody cares. I need you. Let's get it going. The message was nobody cares. And you've heard that as one of the slogans. Nobody cares. Okay. Nobody cares about your excuses. Nobody cares about you're not able to get it done because AB. Nobody cares. What matters is, do you get it done? Pass or fail. There is no in between. You either executed and got it done or you didn't. Don't give yourself qualifiers. Don't make excuses for yourself because nobody cares. Do your job. And at Georgia, you better do it well because there's somebody waiting to play behind you and somebody behind that person. They didn't get recruited to come in and sit. They came to get recruited to beat you out and take your job. And every day that is on the line over there. And if that sounds tough, it is. And I've told you, I said, look, this place ain't for everybody. Not every player is cut out to handle this grind, to handle Kirby Smart on the microphone, the megaphone, whatever you want to call it. When he's walking around practices and he's talking the whole time, so-and-so, I need you to run. So-and-so, what kind of route was that? So-and-so, you cannot let up. It reminds me so much of the military training that I had at Fort Benning. Jump school was only 3 weeks, but those black hats, and that's what we called them. They're like drill instructors, only they wore black hats, so they were known as black hats. Those black hats were everywhere. And if you were slacking, they were going to put you in the gig pit. And it's kind of like that at Georgia, right? Now, listen, all due respect to all the veterans who also served, I'm not equating football to war. Everybody knows that. So please don't anyone take disrespect to that comparison. But understand the discipline and the attention to detail. Our saying in the 82nd was stay alert, stay alive. I guarantee you that that's the mentality at Georgia. Stay alert, keep your position, right? Stay alert, win championships. This is a team that's on an edge, man. Kirby's got him on a rail, but there are plenty of things to work on between now and that opening game against UT Martin. And Kirby said that. Kirby said only 25% of the work is done. There's a lot ahead. I can't wait for it. I can't wait to document, can't wait to write about it, columns, videos, analysis. We give it to you at DawgNation.com. I hope you appreciate and enjoy that. I know this. I appreciate our sponsor, Ingles. I want to take a moment here at the end of the program to recognize Ingles. Stay tuned to DawgNation this week. You get to see DawgNation Daily. We got some tape podcasts there with Brandon Adams, and Connor Riley's going to be knocking it out while the DawgNation cruise is in effect. So everyone have a wonderful week. I hope you enjoy your week. Look forward to the draft, and we will visit again next Monday. I will be with Kenny McIntosh when he gets drafted, so look for some content on that at the end of this week as well. And now I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Ingles, and listen to their message.
Did you know that Ingles sells more organics than any other store? Or that they run their own dairy? Or that they only serve USDA choice and prime meat? Did you know that they have more local craft beer than any place else? Or that they have Energy Smart stores? Or that they professionally slice and package imported cheese from Europe? Did you know about their giant international aisle, local farm partnerships, curbside pickup, wine department? Or that they donate 3,956 meals a day to local food banks? Well, now you do. It's all in the bag. Ingles, low prices, love the savings.